Well, hello folks, I'm L.A. Little and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets and we do it from a neoclassical perspective each time, asking ourselves just one question: what happened today and what does it tell us about the coming days? We do the show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday, broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time, archived on YouTube under the channel L.A. Little. Check it out there and subscribe if you wish to have some content pushed to you, or at least notification of when content is posted. You know, I say I do the show 4 times a week. I also do a weekly show where we ask the same question, but we ask it on a weekly basis, asking for an intermediate term time frame, a view of that, how it looks and what it looks like. So it's the same idea, just on a different time frame. And really, if you study neoclassical, that is what it's all about. And it's what time frame you're looking at, how you line your trades up on those time frames, and what do they mean. Let's look at the indexes. Last night we were looking at two things. We were looking at the transports and the Russell. We wanted to know how they were going to do today. And as happens many times, you know, something strange happens right about the time it needs to. And in this case, it was FedEx coming out talking about a merger or actual acquisition of a European carrier to give it better exposure in Europe. That helped the transports, and we'll look at that here in a bit. The other thing we were looking at was the Russell, and the Russell turns negative today, closes down heavier than the rest, or actually the SPX outran it at the end. But as we look at the indexes here in a few minutes, you know, what we saw is we saw a push up, couldn't hold, started to roll over, and finally kind of had a vacuum fall back down the other way. So no huge losses, but no gains, gave it all up. What gained today? Well, it was that dollar we talked about last night. It held that range last night. Today it shoots higher. Oil also spikes higher, probably a lot of short covering going on. And bonds recoup the losses they had last night. With the dollar going higher, that put pressure on gold and silver and most of the commodities outside the oil or energy complex. If we want to take a look at the indexes themselves here, let's see what we got. And hang on, let me grab the chart. Okay, so unfortunately it looks like I don't have volume in as I start the show, so we'll have to see if it comes in before the end of the show. But I was looking at some other factors, you know, suggesting that we actually had failures on lighter volume. In other words, we went over, we tested into the highs of the last week and yesterday, got over them, reversed back down, closed lower, less volume. And if we look at, like, say, the proxy, maybe the SPY, you can see it there, over, under, back under, lower volume. Sticking with the proxies, let's just look at the Qs, volume there, lower, over, back under. And the Russell, which we were talking about earlier, over, under, plus volume. Now the Russell tried to get into the high of the breakdown bar, 125.60, got to 125.50, not quite there. Let's look at it on the actual index. 1265.85. We got to 1263, so came close. Doesn't do it. Over, under, and it has less volume. So when we look at the indexes that way, those were failures across the board in uniformity. And although we're not talking about big failures, they were failures and suggest that we probably should see some more downside. The question is do other factors tell us that same thing? And when we come back here, we'll look to see what that looks like. We'll be right back.
Learn how to trade with the Trade with LA service provided to you by TA today. This service includes daily portfolio and comments that are emailed to you before the market opens each morning. We provide a daily view of the markets and a model portfolio you can follow even if you work another job. Every weekend, LA records his weekend broadcasts that gives you a synopsis of the week and a prognosis of coming weeks. You will also have access to our Teach and Trade room, where LA provides day trades and teaches neoclassical concepts throughout the trading day. To get started, go to our homepage and click Trade with LA.
Last night, as you remember, we were talking about two things to watch today. And one was the Russell. which we just looked at, and which didn't quite fail. In other words, it didn't test that high, but it got close to it. And when it did, the buyers just plain disappeared. Here's an intraday chart. And what you see here is just what we were just talking about, right? You get up there, you try, it just can't get over it. The buyers just disappear. There's no volume. I'm looking at the IWM. No volume whatsoever. There's no volume off the front. And then once it cascaded lower and began to, sink into day, the volume starts coming out, and you push down with pretty heavy volume into the close. That is buyers unwilling to pay higher and higher prices. And when you see that kind of action, right, that's telling you they're unwilling to buy at higher price. If they're unwilling to buy at the higher price, then guess what they're going to do? They're going to go on strike, and the price is going to drift down to a point where they're willing to buy it again. Is that up here at this top range support? Yeah, probably, unless something else changes, right? Because it's not only that, it's a reflection of what happens in the coming days. But they disappear. The other thing that we were looking at last night was the IYT, and it's fascinating how you can look at these things and know that it's critical. So let's recap what we were talking about last night, and that is that we had a break of this swing point low and this swing point low, got under both of them, stayed under them. What do they do overnight? Well, FedEx, it comes out and tells us, hey, we're going to take over a European competitor, one that UPS tried to take over a couple of years ago, and it failed because of the Europeans said no to the competition, or to the merger actually, and because we're one of the larger components in this index, this sector, that's going to push everything higher, and that's what happened. And you see it pushed up into resistance, closes at the lows, right? Let's look at FedEx right quick, and if we pop into it, you can see it did the same thing. Now FedEx was actually trading. FedEx was trading at it was actually up here. It was like 176 pre-market after the announcement. And then it opened lower and it just sold off most of the day, and it ends up on a close 171.16. Now guess where 171.16 is? There's a retest regenerate zone right here. It was trying to break over that bearish retest regen. Yeah, it's got the volume, but folks, it failed. It's back inside it, does not hold over it, and that's after hugely positive spin and news in this stock. And as part and parcel of that, in the sector, let's go back to the sector here, and in the sector you can see you got the same thing here, retest regen zone here and the lower one. And what does it do? Gets into them, can't even get to the tops of them, reverses, closes at the lows, and even though I don't think it's under them again, it looks to me like it's going to break right back down and not hold. Let me see, that number's 154.02. It closed at 154.14, and this other one was 154.04. So slightly over them, but that is a negative spin in my opinion. So Russell, over under, less volume. Transports gets huge news, should be positive. They sell them right back down. This market, from this perspective, is really pretty weak right now. So, be aware that there's some signs out here telling us, hey, something's not quite correct. So tomorrow we get the economic highlight, which is the Fed minutes being released. Remember, we had employment number on Friday when markets were closed. Futures sold off about 1%. By the time we opened up yesterday, markets were pushing back the other way, and actually got a nice big bump on Monday one more time. But it didn't hold. Today we reversed, came back down. If we look at some of the other sectors, one big huge bounce this morning in biotech, but they sold it back down. If we go over to the IYT we just looked at, let's look at the SOX. SOX goes up, down. As a matter of fact, almost all the bar is going to look like this today, where you go up, you close at or near the lows, and here's another one, the XLB, and so forth. So they all kind of look the same, not really much more to discuss there. The two things we were watching last night are the two things we're going to want to watch again tomorrow night, and that has to do with that selling. And that selling today was obvious. You could see it coming. Now I want to focus on that in the final thoughts as we wrap it up. But first, let's take a look at a viewer question here and see what they are thinking. As we come back here with the viewer question, it has to do with Shell, and there's some late breaking news today where there's some advanced talks, Shell and advanced talks to buy BG for their natural gas and their Brazilian oil. So what is the XOP? What's the effect on the XOP was the question. Now the XOP, for those of you that may not be as familiar with it, it's a gas exploration and production portfolio. It's fairly equal weighted, so it's not heavily weighted. You know, I think the highest holding is like 1.5% or so of the, you know, probably 75 or 80 stocks that are in it. It had a nice push back up here to 53. If you pull over the weekly chart, you know, this broke down. It broke down bad here, and it never really had the volume on the last break. Now it's kind of got a nice little setup to try to go higher. Not a lot of volume in here as it's pushing higher. I don't know how much longer it's going to take to work this off. I don't really think that we're done yet, but that's just based on the charts. You know, as far as this merger acquisition, you saw what FedEx did today. So, you know, will you get the same kind of effect out of this, in that it doesn't really do a lot to the index? It certainly will put some amount of bid up underneath some of these. You know, if you're going to have takeovers. If folks believe or assume that it's going to potentially see others seeing value and coming after these plays. But you know, technically, yeah, if it can get over, you know, I mean, the technical read is here. Can you get over the swing point high? If you can, you can go back up to here. So I mean, that's the trade really. 61.50 if you can get over 54. So you get a $7 push if you can clear 54 and hold it on a weekly basis. And that's the trade if you get the trade. But I'll be quite frank with you here, and you know, volumes don't look bad on the dailies, but frankly speaking, the market is going to decide the fate of most sectors and most stocks in the coming week or two. If this market can't lift, then they're not going to lift. If the market starts to sell off, they're going to sell off. Or if the market starts to rally, they're all going to rally too. So I don't know that, you know, right now is a time to spend a lot of time trying to find a particular, you know, stock or chase a story like this, for example, because it really depends on what the general market wants to do. And as we were talking about earlier, that general market looks like it wants to do a little pressure to the downside next. I'll be right back with that thought, and I'll give you the final thoughts. You know, as a trader, one of the main things you have to be able to do is put yourself in a position to win, and to do that without taking a lot of risk. And I pride myself on being able to do that. Matter of fact, I have a service here, TNT room, and if you pop into that, and I actually have it open here already, if you pop into that, this is a chat room that fellow subscribers to TA Today can view, and I comment all day long, and others comment as well. But one of the things I'm really good at is both teaching what's happening and also, you know, showing the trade setups that are taking place. And so, you know, when I try to do a review mid-afternoon before, you know, a good hour or hour and a half before the markets close, to give people a chance to position if they want. So this was at 12:47 Mountain Time. So that's like, what, an hour and 15 minutes before the market closes. So coming in today, I'm going to just quickly read through this. You know, there were two things we wanted to watch. One was the Russell. I've already told you about that. The other was the transports. And with that FedEx buyout, you know, this one is a little bit more mixed, I said, because at that point, they were still holding those highs. They didn't fail like I showed you a while ago. But I said, on the other hand, the indexes, they're confirming that the Russell is saying, at least right now, and that is they want to go lower. And I indicated that up here that the Russell was, the buyers left early, they went home, which says that we're still range bound on the indexes. And as we look over here at a chart, this was about this time frame when I was writing this. In other words, we were still up here, and I got the S&P up. We were still up here basically at the highs, but we're starting to try to roll over, and I could see from the volume flows and stuff that things just weren't going to work. And so I was telling folks that. And so, as you read through these and look at them, I said somewhere down here something about, here we go. So we are ready, or not all ready, but we're already starting to see that rollover consistent with those reads I had above. And this was, let's see when this one was printed. I think it was about 120. So by 120, right, which is right in here, it started to break down, right? That's the 120 bar. And so I was coming back and saying, hey, that stuff I was telling you up here is starting to already take place, and we're about, I'm about ready to head out. I expect some more softness tomorrow. They showed the cards today, the bulls did, and that is that they have no ace in the hole. This market's going to try to trade back down tomorrow. You get the Fed minutes tomorrow afternoon. That's going to be the key tomorrow. I expect you're going to see softness in the morning, and then we'll potentially see if they can get any juice off that Fed or not. And it really depends on how those minutes read. But my guess is that they're not going to do much, and this market's going to try to trade right back down. And that's where we are tonight, and that is the final thoughts. Thanks for joining me. Have yourself a great day, and I'll see you next time. Good night.